Outside a small noodle shop named Little Reunion Noodle House, the atmosphere was incredibly bustling. A man named Shin was eating noodles, slurping each strand with relish, his mouth constantly praising how delicious it was. The man, while savoring the hot bowl of noodles, shed tears of emotion. He wondered to himself why his own noodle shop could never produce such an exquisite noodle flavor. After finishing his meal, the man approached the counter to pay. He asked, his voice full of admiration, that the owner's noodles were truly supreme and wondered how he could create such a delicious taste. The shop owner, hearing the customer's praise, gave a gentle smile and explained that it was a family secret and could not be revealed. Standing behind the shop owner, 2 other men were also enjoying noodles, and they too were ceaselessly praising them. The young man, after hearing the shop owner's polite refusal, unexpectedly knelt on the ground. With an earnest and sincere expression, he begged the owner to accept him as a disciple. The shop owner looked at the young man kneeling on the ground, then asked, his tone somewhat probing, "It's just that with your physique, you look too thin and weak. I'm afraid you can't even lift the heavy broth pot, let alone learn the trade." Hearing this, the young man's voice filled with determination. He told the shop owner to give him a month. He would definitely work hard at the gym to train his body well, then return to seek the master. The shop owner, upon hearing this, gave a satisfied smile and said, his tone somewhat encouraging, very well. I am truly moved by your sincerity. Go home and train diligently. Return here in a month to try out." The young man secretly smiled to himself, thinking with confidence and a touch of cunning, Just you wait. After I learn this traditional secret recipe, my noodle shop will be incredibly popular." The very next day, Shin immediately signed up for a training schedule at a renowned gym in the city. Inside the gym, the young man was diligently running on the treadmill, his entire body drenched in sweat. After running, he switched to weightlifting, struggling to lift and lower the heavy weights. He strained his body, putting all his effort into each exercise movement, his muscles bulging. And indeed, after just 1 month, Shin had completely transformed. His physique became incredibly muscular, muscles rippling all over his body as he stood proudly before the noodle shop owner. He spoke, his voice full of confidence and excitement. "Master, I have fulfilled our agreement. I have returned today to request a trial." The shop owner, seeing the young man's spectacular transformation, couldn't help but exclaim in astonishment, his voice full of disbelief. After a moment of surprise, the shop owner spoke, his tone somewhat serious. "All right, follow me inside." With that, he lifted the door curtain and stepped into the back area of the shop. The young man followed the shop owner into the back kitchen area, then asked curiously, "I never expected the back kitchen to be this spacious, and to have so many private rooms too." The young man looked towards a room with a closed door full of curiosity and wonder and asked the shop owner, "Master, may I ask what the room behind this door is used for?" The shop owner turned around, looked at the young man, and slowly explained, his tone somewhat formal. "These rooms, each one has its own distinct and important purpose," the shop owner continued, his tone becoming mysterious and somewhat haunting. "To make the noodles richer, more fragrant, and more appealing, the most essential secret lies hidden within." The shop owner approached, gently pushed the room door ajar, then said, his tone somewhat urging, "Go inside." The soft creak of the door hinges sounded as the door slowly opened. As soon as the door creaked open from inside the room, a sultry, seductive female voice called out, as if waiting, "Handsome, you finally arrived." From inside the room, a beautiful woman emerged. She gently took the young man's wrist. Shin stammered, speechless, his voice full of embarrassment and awkwardness. The shop owner stood outside, a knowing and somewhat cunning smile playing on his lips, then said, his tone seemingly encouraging, "Just go inside. Enjoy yourself thoroughly." At this moment, Shin's eyes were completely focused on the woman's sensual figure. The woman's slender waist and long, smooth legs, partially covered by a stylish cheongsam. A close-up of the woman's face, her plump red lips moving slightly, uttering inviting and provocative words. "Handsome, why don't you take off your clothes?" Hearing those words, the young man's face flushed as red as a ripe jackfruit. He even had a nosebleed from the surprise and embarrassment. Take off my clothes for what? Why? Why so direct?" The woman gently touched the young man's shoulder with her soft hand. The woman gracefully pointed towards a part of the room, then spoke, her tone still gentle and inviting. "Handsome, the bathroom is right over here." The young man woke up in a daze, his head still ringing. He asked himself, his voice full of bewilderment and confusion, Where am I?" Two women in red cheongsams, one with black hair and one with blonde hair, were leaning over him, smiling. One of them asked, her tone somewhat teasing, "Handsome, are you finally awake?" The other added, her voice full of amusement, "You slept really soundly." One of the two women explained, her tone still calm, "A moment ago you fell asleep while bathing." A soft, slender female hand gently massaged Shin's entire body. Hearing those words, the young man's face unconsciously flushed with embarrassment. He felt a little ashamed. He thought to himself, his voice full of amusement and some surprise, I never expected that learning to make noodles would come with such wonderful benefits." Both women flashed knowing and seductive smiles. Shin felt so blissful and comfortable that he couldn't help but let out soft moans. The young man was still lying face down on the table. He asked, his tone somewhat impatient and restless, Is it still not ready yet? When can I start learning how to make noodles?" One of the two women slowly stood up straight, then spoke, her tone somewhat mysterious and unpredictable. "Sir, right now you are actually already in the process of making noodles." Hearing those words, the young man couldn't help but be surprised and confused. He asked again, his voice full of incomprehension, "What do you mean?" The shop owner standing outside the room called in, his tone seemingly calm, "Is everything taken care of?" One of the two women inside replied, her voice somewhat cheerful, "Yes, master, it's all taken care of. This is truly top-grade ingredient. We can start now." The young man tried to use all his remaining strength to push himself up. The young man's face now showed extreme horror and bewilderment. He couldn't understand what was really happening to him. He hurriedly looked down at his body, then stammered, speechless, his voice full of fear, My body, why is it like this?" The shop owner continued to explain the process, his tone remaining chillingly calm. "After that, we will use secret ingredients to make it completely tender." The young man was now completely terrified. He tried to scream loudly, but a hand from somewhere suddenly pressed his face down hard. Slender but strong fingers clamped tightly around the young man's mouth, preventing him from screaming anymore. The young man could only let out muffled, tragic, and desperate groans. The shop owner calmly continued to explain the noodle-making steps as if nothing was happening. The noodle-making process, step 2 is kneading the dough. The shop owner explained further, his tone still cold and terrifying. The massage process just now has helped to knead and condition the dough to its best state ready for the next steps. The two women in red cheongsam slowly lifted the young man off the table. The shop owner stood there, coldly ordering, "Place him on that large chopping block." The shop owner continued, his tone still chillingly calm. "After that, we will proceed to the third step of the noodle-making process." At this point, the owner's tone remained unchanged. The noodle-making process, step 3 is breaking down the ingredients. A soft, slender female hand gently caressed and twisted the young man's thigh. "This is an absolutely wonderful ingredient for us to make a fragrant, rich broth." Immediately after, deep, terrifying cuts began to appear on the young man's thigh, fresh blood gushing out. The swish-swish sound of a knife cutting into flesh echoed gruesomely. Many hands from somewhere were mercilessly tearing the young man's body apart. He could only let out weak, intermittent moans of pain. The shop owner calmly continued, as if introducing a special dish. "And this arm, after being chopped up and thoroughly stir-fried, will be the most delicious side dish imaginable." The shop owner flashed a cunning and demonic smile, then said, his tone somewhat amused, "And next, this is the part you've been looking forward to the most. And it's also the most important step in our entire noodle-making process." The shop owner loudly commanded, his tone full of authority, "Now, begin the noodle rolling process." Immediately, the two women in red cheongsams quickly carried the young man, now no longer human-shaped, and placed him inside a large machine that resembled a meat grinder. The two women forcefully held down the young man, now almost a pulpy mass of flesh, at the mouth of the rolling machine. The young man, or rather what was left of him, was slowly fed into the rolling machine. The young man's eyes widened in terror, reflecting the image of the machine's sharp blades approaching. A final, desperate, and painful scream from the young man erupted, then ceased. A dazzling, brilliant white light suddenly appeared, enveloping the entire space. Inside the rolling machine, countless horrifically deformed, contorted human faces were piled on top of each other. The gruesome creak of metal grinding against metal echoed. Minced meat was coming out of the small hole of the machine. From the output end of the machine, skin-colored noodles, still stained with fresh blood, were slowly extruded into long strands. The creak of the machinery continued to reverberate. At this moment, outside the noodle shop, customers were smiling with delight and satisfaction. A delicious bowl of noodles that captivated everyone. The shop owner stood there, his face wearing a demonic and inscrutable smile. The other man, after enjoying the noodles, expressed his wish to learn his trade.